It was a moonless night when Sarah embarked on her solitary journey, driving through winding roads that cut through the heart of the countryside. She had decided to take a shortcut through a quaint, nearly deserted town to shave some time off her long drive. As she entered the eerily quiet town, a sense of unease washed over her. The dimly lit streets were devoid of any signs of life. Even the street lights flickered, casting unsettling shadows that seemed to dance in the corners of her vision. Pushing her discomfort aside, Sarah continued down the desolate road. The engines hummed the only sound in the eerie silence. The town soon disappeared in her rearview mirror, and she was once again enveloped by the darkness of the countryside. Miles passed, and Sarah's unease grew. The road seemed to stretch endlessly with no signs of civilization in sight. She checked her GPS, but it simply displayed no signal. Panic began to gnaw at her as she realized she had no idea where she was. Just when despair was about to take hold, Sarah spotted a narrow dirt road that seemed to lead somewhere. Desperation drove her to take the turn, hoping it would lead her back to civilization. The path twisted and turned, taking her deeper into the unknown. After what felt like hours, Sarah's car came to a sudden halt. The engine sputtered and died, leaving her in complete darkness. Fear surged through her veins as she fumbled for her phone, only to find it completely drained. With trembling hands, she exited the vehicle and was greeted by the overwhelming sensation being watched. The moon emerged from behind the clouds, casting an eerie glow on a vast, desolate field that stretched out before her. That's when she noticed the faint outline of a figure standing at the center of the field. Panic and dread consumed her as she approached, and her heart sank when she recognized the figure as herself, lying unconscious on the ground. Sarah's mind reeled with horror as she realized she was looking at her own lifeless body. How could this be? She was still standing, alive and breathing, yet her lifeless form lay before her. Paralyzed by fear, she couldn't tear her eyes away. As the minutes ticked by, she felt a sinister presence closing in around her. Malevolent whispers filled the air, and the moon's glow grew colder and more ominous. Sarah knew she was not alone in that desolate field. In a panic, she reached for her lifeless body, desperate to wake herself from this nightmare, and just as her fingers brushed her cold, lifeless skin, everything went black. The next thing Sarah knew, she was back in her car, the engine humming as it idled on a well-lit highway. Her heart raced, and her body was drenched in sweat. It was as though she had just awakened from a haunting dream. Shaken to her core, Sarah continued her journey, haunted by the memory of that desolate field and the chilling encounter with her own lifeless form. To this day, she can't explain what happened that night, but one thing is certain: the desolate journey will forever be etched in her mind as a nightmarish, inexplicable reality. On a moonless night in the dead of summer, to thrill seekers, Mike and Dave set out on an ill-fated road trip that would plunge them into a nightmare beyond imagination. With nothing but their daring spirits and an old, battered car, they were on a quest for adventure and adrenaline. Their journey took them along a desolate stretch of highway that cut through the heart of an eerie, pitch-black forest. The only illumination came from the faint glow of the car's headlights, which seemed to carve a narrow path through the impenetrable darkness. As they ventured deeper into the wilderness, an unsettling stillness settled around them. No other vehicle shared the road, and the only sounds were the distant hoots of owls and the whispering of the wind through the trees. Suddenly, the car's engine sputtered and died, leaving them stranded in the middle of nowhere. Panic welled up inside them as they desperately tried to restart the engine, but it remained stubbornly silent. With no choice but to seek help, they decided to venture into the forest in search of a nearby town or shelter. Armed with flashlights and their reckless determination, they disappeared into the blackness of the woods. Their flashlights cast eerie, shifting shadows on the ancient trees as they stumbled through the underbrush. The silence was oppressive, and their footsteps sounded like thunder in the eerie stillness. After what felt like hours of aimless wandering, they stumbled upon an isolated cabin hidden deep in the woods. The cabin appeared abandoned, its windows shattered, and its walls covered in cryptic symbols and writings. An unsettling feeling washed over them as they entered the cabin, searching for any sign of life. Inside, they discovered a room adorned with a bizarre collection of masks, each one more grotesque than the last. The air grew heavy with a malevolent presence, and they could feel eyes watching them from the shadows. Just as they decided to leave, a sinister figure emerged from the darkness, a tall, hooded figure with piercing, glowing eyes. It spoke in a language they couldn't comprehend, its voice sending shivers down their spines. Terrified, they fled from the cabin, crashing through the forest in a desperate bid to escape the haunting presence that pursued them. The hooded figure followed, its footsteps silent but relentless. Hours later, they stumbled back onto the highway, their breathless gasps echoing in the night. The car, inexplicably, roared to life as they approached. Without looking back, they sped away from the forest, leaving behind the horrors they had encountered. Mike and Dave never spoke of that night again, their friendship forever bound by the terrifying encounter in the woods. They had ventured into the darkness seeking adventure, but what they found was a malevolence beyond their wildest nightmares, a nightmare that would haunt them for the rest of their days. It was a chilly autumn evening when the Williams family embarked on a road trip that would forever haunt their nightmares. With the car packed full of supplies and excitement in the air, they set out on a journey into the unknown, heading for a remote cabin in the heart of the countryside. As the night fell, the darkness outside seemed to swallow their car whole. The only source of light came from the dim glow of the dashboard. The narrow road they were on was surrounded by dense woods, and the silence was broken only by the sound of their tires on the asphalt. Suddenly, without warning, the engine sputtered and died, leaving them stranded on an isolated stretch of road. Panic washed over John Williams, the father of the family, as he tried to restart the car to no avail. Desperate to find help, John decided to leave his wife, Susan, and their two children, Emily and Michael, in the car while he walked down the road in search of assistance. He promised to return quickly. John had been walking for what felt like hours when he stumbled upon an abandoned gas station. The sight of it brought relief, and he hurried inside, hoping to find a phone to call for help. The gas station was eerie, covered in a thick layer of dust and cobwebs. As John approached the counter, his heart sank. Behind it stood a grotesque and malevolent figure, a clown dressed in tattered, blood-stained clothing, his face concealed by a grotesque mask. The clown's eyes bored into John's soul, and his voice sent shivers down his spine as he asked, "Need some help, friend?" Terrified, John tried to escape, but the clown moved with unnatural speed, blocking his path at every turn. The gas station seemed to twist and contort around him, becoming a nightmarish labyrinth from which there was no escape. The clown's laughter echoed in John's ears as he realized he had stumbled into a nightmare. The malevolent entity subjected him to a series of horrific and inexplicable tortures, each more horrifying than the last. Back at the car, Susan and the children grew frantic as the hours passed with no sign of John. Their desperate attempts to contact him went unanswered. The car remained lifeless, and the woods seemed to close in around them. Weeks turned into months, and John Williams was never seen again. His family was left devastated, haunted by the inexplicable loss of their beloved father and husband. They returned home, but their lives were forever marred by the nightmarish road trip and the curse of the clown that had torn their family apart. To this day, the Williams family lives in seclusion, their lives shattered by the terrifying events of that fateful night and the malevolent clown that had stolen their father away into the darkness.